Cecil E. Bolt in dedication to his family and the community of Fowler, as well as the United States Postal Service. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California yields back, and the chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Having no other speakers at this time, I continue to reserve, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Texas reserves his time. The gentlelady from New York is recognized.
Having no further speakers, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting H.R. 4389, the Cecil E. Bolt Post Office. I urge all members to join me in support of this bill and yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentleman from Texas yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 4389? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The gentlelady from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I object to the vote on the grounds that a quorum is not present and make a point of order that a quorum is not present.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this motion will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 6260.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 6260, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 211 Hope Street in Mountain View, California as the Lieutenant Kenneth M. Ballard Memorial Post Office.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Farenthold, and the gentlelady from New York, Mrs. Maloney, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume and request unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and submit extraneous material for inclusion in the bill under consideration.
Without objection, it's so ordered. The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, H.R. 6260, introduced by the gentlelady from California, Ms. Eshoo, would designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 211 Hope Street in Mountain View, California as a Lieutenant Kenneth M. Ballard Memorial Post Office. This bill was introduced August 1st and reported favorably from the Government Oversight and Reform Committee. Mr. Speaker, Lieutenant Ballard was committed his entire adult life to serve our country. Upon graduating from the Mountain View High School in 1995, Mr. Ballard enlisted in the Army. During his military career, he served in Germany, Bosnia, Macedonia, and Iraq. Sadly, Lieutenant Ballard was killed in 2004 while deployed in Iraq. I'm truly grateful for the brave and heroic service of Lieutenant Ballard and for all those who serve and defend our nation every day. Mr. Speaker, Lieutenant Ballard is well worthy as a designee of this postal facility naming, and I urge all members to join me in support of this bill. And I'll reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Maloney.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, as a member of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, I am pleased to join my colleagues in support of H.R. 6260, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 211 Hope Street in Mountain View, California as the Lieutenant Kenneth M. Ballard Memorial Post Office. The bill before us was first introduced by my good friend and colleague, Representative Anna Eshoo, from the great state of California, and I yield her as much time as she may consume.
The lady yields. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague and good friend and classmate, Ms. Maloney from New York, and our colleague from the committee, and thank you for your very kind and generous remarks about the designation of the United States Post Office in Mountain View, California, in my district, as the Lieutenant Kenneth M. Ballard Memorial Post Office. A Mountain View native, Ken Ballard joined the Army at the age of 18. He comes from a distinguished family that have given a long line of service, of military service to our country, and he attended basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky. He went on to bravely serve our nation in Germany, Bosnia, Macedonia, and Iraq. On April 3, 2004, Lieutenant Ballard's battalion, the 2nd Battalion, the 37th Regiment, 1st Armored Division, turned in their weapons and began preparing to return home. The very next day, violence broke out in Baghdad, and shortly thereafter, Lieutenant Ballard's tour was unexpectedly extended for an additional 120 days. Less than 2 months later, on May 20, 2004, after 9 years of service, Lieutenant Ballard was killed in Najaf, Iraq, by accidental discharge of the M240 weapon on his vehicle. He was a recipient of the Purple Heart and 3 Bronze Stars, 2 with Valor device. Lieutenant Ballard was a true American hero, and his ultimate sacrifice deserves our formal recognition of gratitude, which is what we are doing here today. In paying tribute to him and his service, the House will not only honor his sacrifice, but also that of every brave American who dons a uniform in defense of our nation each and every day. So many have given their lives so that we may live ours freely, and each deserves our gratitude, our respect, and our remembrance. I want to thank the City Council of Mountain View, California for their support of this effort, and I want to pay tribute to Lieutenant Ballard's mother, Karen Meredith, for her unswerving advocacy on behalf of her son, that the truth would be documented and put forward, and of course her support in the renaming of the post office of his hometown after him. So I urge my colleagues to vote for this legislation. I thank everyone on a bipartisan basis that has been involved in this, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady from California yields back. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I'll continue to reserve, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I join my colleague in compliment her and her very moving tribute not only to her constituent but to all the men and women who serve our great nation. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for their support of this renaming in honor of a true American hero. And noting that I have no additional speakers, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady from New York yields back. Mr. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join the gentlelady from California, the gentlelady from New York, and in support of this legislation honoring Lieutenant Kenneth M. Ballard and naming the post office the Lieutenant Kenneth M. Ballard Memorial Post Office, and urge my colleagues to enthusiastically support H.R. 6260 and yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 6260? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the gentlelady from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I object to the vote on the grounds that a quorum is not present, and make a point of order that a quorum is not present.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on the motion will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Hawaii seek to be recognized?
Mr. Speaker, I offer a privileged resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 839, resolved that the House of Representatives, 1, receives with profound sorrow the news of the death of the Honorable Daniel K. Inouye, a senator from the state of Hawaii. 2, authorizes the Speaker to appoint such members as he may designate to serve with members of the Senate as a committee to represent the House in attendance at the funeral of the senator. 3, directs the clerk to communicate this resolution to the Senate and transmit a copy to the families of the senator. And 4, when it adjourns today, does so as a further mark of respect to the memory of the senator.
The gentlelady from Hawaii is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this week, my state of Hawaii and our nation lost a truly great man, Senator Daniel K. Inouye. He began serving our country when he was only 17 years old, joining the Army after the attack on Pearl Harbor. At that time, many questioned the patriotism of people who looked like him, but for Senator Inouye, that was precisely why he joined the service. He was a true patriot. He loved this country and was willing to do whatever he could to defend it. In fact, he lost his arm charging a series of machine gun nests on a hill on San Terenzo, Italy on April 21, 1945. His heroic actions rightly earned him the Medal of Honor. He was the embodiment of the greatest generation: courage, sacrifice, humility, and love of country. It's why the commitment to serve and protect those who fight for our country has always been one he took personally. It's why he always stood up for the ideals of freedom and justice that our country is founded upon, because he saw firsthand what happens when we don't. And it's why he was always proud to stand up for our heritage in Hawaii. The truth is, Senator Inouye deeply loved our beautiful state of Hawaii. Half a century ago, he had a vision of the Hawaii we inherit from him today. Over his many decades of service, he displayed a builder's skill, pouring the foundation of the modern and vibrant Hawaii that is his legacy. And so the greatest tribute we can pay Senator Inouye is to acquire his vision, apply his skills, and build on the remarkable foundation he laid for us. From strengthening our schools and university to building our roads and bridges. And just today, our state marked another milestone led by Senator Inouye. We signed a full funding grant agreement with the U.S. government for our Oahu Rail project. This was a project championed by Senator Inouye for many years through many ups and downs. The senator saw the future of Hawaii often before others did. And when he saw something that was going to better the lives of the people in Hawaii, he always fought for it. This is probably one of the things he will be remembered for the most, his tenacity in fighting for the people of Hawaii and for doing what is right. And while he may have been a fierce competitor, he was always a gentle spirit. In a Washington that at times is so torn apart by partisanship, Dan Inouye always worked to diffuse that situation and bring us together. He understood that words mattered as much as actions, and he always worked to elevate the debate. And he stood by his friends, no matter their political stripes. It's why we've all heard from people on both sides of the aisle, and some who are speaking today, who are so saddened by his death. But what our country lost this week, I received a message from our good friend and brother, Eni Faleomavaega from American Samoa. He is traveling overseas and asked that I mention his deep condolences to the people of Hawaii. And I ask unanimous consent to incorporate it into the record, a statement that we have received from Congressman Faleomavaega.
Without objection, so ordered.
Eni, like so many calls Senator Inoue a mentor. He taught us all lessons we'll never forget. Simply put, Senator Inoue was an extraordinary person, a giant in the Senate, who accomplished so much for the people of Hawaii and our nation. It is now up to us to carry on that work, to realize his vision, to draw upon his strength of purpose and strength of character, to do what is right. I know the people of Hawaii join me today in pledging to do just that. Aloha, Senator Inoue. Mr. Speaker, I also ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.Res. 839.
Without objection, so ordered.
And now I'd like to yield as much time as he consumes to my colleague from the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas, Kilili Sablan. Don. He was standing there waiting.
Gentleman will proceed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I also like to express my deepest condolences to the people of Hawaii for their loss of a great senator and a great American. I would not be here today standing in the well of the House if not for Senator Daniel K. Inoue. This beloved leader did so much for many Americans, for so many people of the Pacific, as we are hearing tonight. He touched the lives of so many individuals, including my own life. In 1986, Senator Inoue gave me the opportunity to work as a fellow in his office here at the Capitol. Senator Inoue had established a program to bring young men and women from the Pacific Islands to Washington to learn about Congress and the United States government. We came from American Samoa and from the Northern Mariana Islands, my home. What an opportunity Senator Inoue gave us. What an eye-opening experience to see Congress at work. What an education to watch up close this distinguished man of the Senate, by turns dignified, gracious, good-humored, principled, quiet, and when called to defend the forgotten, fierce and formidable. I was inspired. Seeing what an elected official could be, what he could do to bring justice to this world, I dared to dream of one day doing the same. The Northern Mariana Islands did not even have a seat in Congress in 1986. That did not happen until 23 years later. But throughout those 23 years, I held that dream deep in my heart, the dream that Senator Daniel Inoue planted, that someday I could represent my people, as I had seen him represent the people of Hawaii and America. I will admit that dream did not always burn lightly. There were times when I did not tend the flames. But when the day came that Congress granted a seat to the people of the Northern Mariana Islands, that flame roared to life. That inspiration that Daniel K. Inoue had lit in my heart was still alive, fed by the ideals that he had instilled in me those many years ago. The ideal that we're all equals in this great country, as citizens and as individuals, and that against all odds, we can overcome poverty, we can overcome prejudice, we can overcome terrible, terrible, terrible physical injury, and survive stronger than ever. We can survive and prevail if we believe in the inherent decency and goodness of America, as Senator Daniel K. Inoue believed, if we are not afraid to dream. And so I dreamt, inspired by this man, aided by the opportunity he once gave to me. And tonight, Mr. Speaker, I stand here in the well of this hollow chamber to say thank you to Daniel K. Inoue. Thank you, Senator Inoue, for showing me the way here. Thank you, sir, for showing us all what it means to be a true member of Congress. Thank you and good night. Rest well. We shall always remember you. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Mr. Speaker, I now would like to yield such time as he may consume to my good friend from Alaska, Congressman Don Young.
I thank the good lady for yielding. This is a solemn moment. The gentleman of the Marianas just gave a presentation. And I'd like to think Senator Inouye and I played a role in making sure he could stand on this floor and give that presentation. Danny Inouye, the senator from Hawaii, actually the third senator from Alaska. Danny was always able, and excuse me, Danny, for saying this, I don't want to call you senator this time, but just Danny. He was always able to reach across the aisle and solve problems of the non-contiguous states with my good friend Senator Stevens. Hand in hand, two veterans, one that lost the arm and one that flew 36 missions over the hump. Together they were one. They were brothers, and they said that so many times. Brothers in arms, brothers in supporting two non-contiguous states, brothers in solving problems for people across the aisle. I didn't serve with Danny, but I knew him well because he was the friend of my people, the Alaska Natives. In fact, we had him last year or 2 years ago up into the AFN convention speaking to the needs and necessity for the Hawaiian Natives to be recognized as Alaska Natives were. He was an icon, a person that could work together. And think about this, a young man that was Japanese, not in an intern camp, volunteered for the America that he loved. He loved and served and lost, but he always won. He always won. But he did that by reaching the one arm he had left in his hand and shaking that hand and saying, let's do it together. Let's work together. Let's not have the animosity, the rancor that's occurring today. In fact, when I think about it a moment, I think, you know, Danny, God bless you. You're in heaven. Hawaii is better off. Alaska is better off. But if we don't change our ways, you would be terribly disappointed. You would not be happy the way things are happening in this Congress, including the United States Senate. And so, Danny, I will tell you one thing. You have Alaskans, especially my people, my wife, my children, and my grandchildren, that thank you for the efforts you put forth to take the Aboriginal people and bring them into the mainstream of life with the help of Senator Ted Stevens. So God bless you, Danny, Senator for Hawaii and the third Senator for the state of Alaska. And I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield such time as she may consume to my friend from California, Congresswoman Doris Matsui.
Gentlelady yields. Gentlelady is recognized, from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to thank my friend, the gentlelady from Hawaii, for organizing this time for all of us to honor Daniel Inouye. It's with heavy heart that I rise here today in support of this resolution honoring the late Senator Inouye. On December 17th, our country lost a beloved leader, an American hero, and a man I was honored to call my friend. Rising to become the most senior member of the United States Senate, Senator Inouye will be remembered not only for his distinguished record as a legislator, but also for his heroism on the battlefield. Senator Inouye served his country on the battlefields of Europe during World War II and earned the nation's highest honor, the Military Valor, the Medal of Honor. As a soldier, Senator Inouye fought for the lives of American citizens back home to protect his fellow servicemen and also for the ideals our country stands for: equality, justice, and freedom. When he joined politics, the only thing that changed was his battlefield. Senator Inouye was a giant in Congress who demonstrated his strong love for his country and belief in the American ideals with every action he took. He was a man who stood by his convictions and fought for what he believed, and was never afraid to reach across the aisle and look for bipartisan solutions to some of our nation's most pressing problems. And while his presence was certainly strongly felt here in the Capitol, he remained accessible to and loved, not only by his constituents in Hawaii, but across this country. When I put the word out to my California constituents that Senator Inouye had passed away, that Congress had lost one of its greatest leaders, I received an outpouring of comments from my constituents expressing their sorrow and sharing stories of ways that Senator Inouye had touched their lives. Even in my district of Sacramento, California, Senator Inouye was well known, well respected, and well loved. As the highest serving Asian American in our country's history, Senator Inouye was a true inspiration to Asian American community. As a member of Congress, my late husband, Bob Matsui, worked closely with Senator Inouye on the movement for Japanese American redress and reparations. Together with colleagues, they helped secure a formal government apology for innocent Japanese Americans who were victims of one of our country's darkest moments. It would be impossible to find a stronger voice for our nation's veterans than Senator Inouye. He was instrumental in getting the Congressional Gold Medal awarded to several military units from World War II. Units who were composed almost entirely of persons of Japanese ancestry and exhibited exceptional bravery on the battlefield, while their own families were in internment camps here at home. Earlier this year, I worked closely with Senator Inouye to ensure that the Congressional Gold Medal toured the country so everyone could have the opportunity to learn about the bravery and heroism of these veterans. This is the type of man Senator Inouye was. He was a man who, up to the very end, worked tirelessly to bring recognition to those who deserve it the most. Senator Inouye devoted his life to serving his country. He was an inspiration and a role model, a real role model, an example of what every public servant should strive to be. My thoughts and prayers are with his wife Irene, his son Ken, and their family, and especially to his granddaughter Maggie, who we will make sure hear about the stories of her great-grandfather. On a personal level, when my husband passed away some 8 years ago, I recall how generous and sincere Danny Inouye was towards me and my family during those difficult days. I know this is a difficult time, but it is my sincere hope that there is some comfort in knowing that his legacy of remarkable service and dedication to our country, his love of country, will live on for generations to come. He was truly a giant. I yield back, reminder of my time.
The lady yields back. The gentlelady from Hawaii is recognized.
I would now like to yield such time as she may consume to my friend from California, Judy Chu.
The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Earlier this week, our country lost a valiant war hero and one of the greatest statesmen of our time with the passing of Senator Daniel K. Inouye. Senator Inouye was an inspirational leader and a true American patriot in every sense of the word. In fact, it's hard to think of the state of Hawaii without Daniel Inouye. Since the moment Hawaii gained statehood in 1959, He has represented the Aloha State in Congress and ensured that Hawaii and others in the Pacific region have access to resources and facilities that many on the continental U.S. take for granted. Even though he was labeled an enemy alien during World War II, he made the decision to enlist in the Japanese-American Go for Broke 442nd Regimental Combat Team. He fought bravely, even as thousands of Japanese Americans were unjustly placed in internment camps at home. In one terrible battle in Italy, he led an assault against a heavily defended ridge. Germans shot at him with machine guns, destroying his right arm. Despite that, he was still able to destroy the German bunker. His bravery earned him the Medal of Honor and the Congressional Gold Medal, and for that alone he will always be remembered as a true American hero. But Senator Inouye's service to our country extends far beyond World War II. He was a trailblazer in politics when there were few Asian Americans. He rose through the ranks, becoming the chairman of the powerful Senate Appropriations Committee and the president pro tem of the U.S. Senate, and became our highest-ranking Asian American politician. He broke barriers and paved the way for countless Asian American and Pacific Islanders in public service. In my role as chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, I truly valued his guidance as a founder and longtime executive board member of our caucus. He was a tireless advocate for both the people of Hawaii and the broader Asian American and Pacific Islander community. All of us who had the honor to know and learn from him will dearly miss his leadership and the honor and integrity that he brought to the job. My heart goes out to his wife, Irene Hirano Inouye, his son, Daniel Ken Inouye, Jr., and the many family, friends, colleagues, and constituents for their tremendous loss. So, aloha, Senator Inouye. Thank you for your lifetime of service. While your passing has left us with a great void, we know that your legacy will continue to live on in the many accomplishments you leave behind and in the generations you've inspired through your service to our country.
Gentlelady from Hawaii is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield such time as she may consume to my friend and colleague from Hawaii, Congresswoman Colleen Hanabusa.
The lady from Hawaii yields, and the chair recognizes the gentlelady from Hawaii.
Thank you. And thank you to my colleague from Hawaii for doing this. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of the Resolution 839, which relates to the death of the Honorable Daniel K. Inouye, Senator from the state of Hawaii. I know that as the most senior member of the United States Senate, as the Appropriations Chair, and as a true war hero, Senator Inouye will be remembered in Washington, in Hawaii, and across the nation. Tomorrow, he will be given one of the highest honors of anyone in this country, and that is to be able to lie in state in this capital. But for me, the passing strikes deeper because he was also my mentor and a dear friend. I had the honor of having lunch with Senator Inouye just before he went into the hospital, and we discussed many things. Know that his love and concern for Hawaii and for America has never wavered. He never stopped thinking about how things could be made better, who we could help, and what we could accomplish. He was, of course, a force to be reckoned with. And as I said at the time, I just couldn't think of Hawaii without Senator Inouye. Since his passing, statements like the congressman from Alaska just said about Senator being their third senator has been made by other congressmen to me as well. So you know that his impact was felt very deeply throughout this country. As long as Hawaii has been a state, Dan Inouye served us in Washington, us meaning the people of Hawaii. For most people in Hawaii, he was always there, as dependable as the sunrise. And yet, he was never proud never acted as though he was better than the people he represented. I can tell you from personal experience that it is just impossible to be an elected official in Hawaii without being in awe of Daniel K. Inouye, someone who served so long, accomplished so much, and yet made it seem so effortless. Hawaii was and is a grassroots state. You need to get out there with the people, share their activities, eat their food. Now that's really critical. Laugh at their jokes. And there was Dan Inouye, the war hero, recipient of the Medal of Honor, U.S. Senator, an iconic force in Hawaii's history and politics. And he just fit right in. Us, the people of Hawaii, we can spot a phony a mile away, but we loved him because we knew he was the real thing. He was genuine. So here was the most senior member of the Senate, chair of the Appropriations Committee, President pro tem, and third in line to the succession to the presidency. But in his heart, he was no different than that kid growing up in the territorial Hawaii, not wearing shoes until he got to high school. By the way, not wearing shoes we called going hadashi in Hawaii, who volunteered just out of high school to serve his country in war. And I think that's why, when he ran for re-election, his bumper stickers didn't say Senator Inouye or Daniel K. Inouye. It just said Dan. I still remember his political poster when I began to recognize political posters. Solid black with Dan, his signature, in yellow. Simple, yet strong as he was. I didn't know at that time the significance of the colors. Those were the colors of his alma mater, McKinley High School. Again, a statement that he never forgot where he came from. For me, knowing Dan Inouye and learning from him, that down-to-earth nature was a very special thing. When he shared his insights about serving the people who elected us and doing what is right for Hawaii and America, I knew it was coming from his heart. Not just that. What he was doing was advising to show the true love for the people he served, but also that he was sharing these insights with me because he cared enough about me to pass on the lessons. He genuinely wanted me to do better. Quietly, with that great smile and that beautiful, resonant voice, he gave that gift of his experience and his wisdom. A man of such accomplishments and power who was unbelievably generous of himself. I will never forget that gift from my friend Dan Inouye. For the next few days, as we say goodbye to a genuine hero, a champion of Hawaii, a political icon, I hope, Mr. Speaker, you will join us in remembering a wonderful man and to pass this resolution so that we may all say, Aloha, Dan, mahalo, and thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back. The lady from Hawaii is recognized.
I now yield such time as he may consume to my good friend from California, Congressman Mike Honda.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Speaker. I too rise today with a heavy heart to honor and remember Senator Dan Inouye. On December 17, 2012, the state of Hawaii, our nation, the Asian Americans and Pacific Islander community, and all champions of social justice and change lost our Polaris, our guiding light, our guiding star, Senator Daniel K. Inouye. I'm deeply saddened by the passing of my dear friend who has been a hero to us all, his ohana. From his service to the battlefields of World War II, we mention the Medal of Honor, to the Senate floor. In serving the Aloha State of Congress since it achieved statehood in 1959 and rising to become the highest-ranking Asian Pacific Islander politician in our nation's history, his impact on our lives and our community is immeasurable and unparalleled. The senator has had a deep sense and reflected a deep sense of dignity in spite of any kinds of situations that may surround him. A quiet calm of strength, even in the battlefields to the halls of Congress. We know that during the time of Watergate, he was slighted and insulted through a racial slur. But he did not change and exchange one for another. He just reflected his quiet and strength and dignity by not responding at all. The rest of the country did for him. And as he went through the Watergate process, he showed that he could serve and deal with justice with an even hand. And with that, he showed that this country can deal with all kinds of problems that it faces. As chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senator Inouye worked across the aisle to ensure that the needs of people of Hawaii and the sovereign rights of Native Hawaiians and other indigenous people, as our friend Don Young had mentioned, and as well as the AAPI communities, were priorities of this government. During the 70s and 80s, Senator Inouye played a critical role in making sure that this country understood its behavior towards the Japanese Americans on the mainland and in Hawaii. There was an effort to secure an apology, a recognition of the wrongdoings, and also move forward with the idea of reparations. But it didn't seem like they were making much progress. He wisely said to the leadership of this movement, perhaps we need to do a study and a commission to educate and inform the rest of the members of this body to understand what it is that we are fighting for. And so came about the World War II Commission on Internment. And through the commission's study, and they're gathering information across this country and listening to testimony from people who were aged to the people who were younger, securing information validating the position of those who were seeking an apology from this government, came the conclusion and the final decision to move forward with a bill, Bill 442, to rescind Executive Order 9022 and 9044, and also to make sure that this country understood the reasons for the incarceration and internment of Japanese Americans in this country during 1942. The conclusion of that commission reflected the wisdom of Senator Inouye. The conclusion of the commission said the reason why internment happened to Americans of Japanese descent was because of war hysteria, racial prejudice, and the failure of political leadership. And to that, it's been always a reminder for me, when I listen to him and I watch him work, that he will never ever allow the lack of failure of political leadership in this country to ever fall, not on his watch. Since 1959, when I graduated from high school, I reflected back now today of how young he was then and how he stood his ground and guided Alaska and this country through his life and his dedication to public service. And so Senator Inouye proved to be a very devoted husband and a father, and I extend my sincerest condolences to the entire Inouye family. And Senator Inouye's passing may mark an end of an era, one would say, but I would declare and say that his work will continue to impact this country in terms of a continuous attention to his ohana and to the rights of all people, including Aboriginal folks. He once stated in his fight to protect the Filipino World War II veterans, he said about them, he said, heroes should never be forgotten or ignored. And he always continued to make sure that those who serve this country were not to be forgotten or ignored. So we as a grateful nation will never ever forget the senator from Hawaii, a war hero, a servant through his military service, a servant through his service in the halls of Congress. And so I say to him, aloha nui loha, mahalo. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Hawaii is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all of my colleagues who came to the floor tonight to share their experiences and thoughts about Senator Inoue, as well as all my other colleagues who expressed their condolences to Irene Hirano Inoue, his wife, his son Ken, his daughter-in-law, his granddaughter Maggie, and all those who have expressed and shared their experiences with Senator Inoue. This is a man who touched so many lives, not just in Hawaii, but all across the country. And we all know at this point what a great senator he was and all of the good works that he did. But at a time like this, we often hear from just individuals who want to share their very human stories about individual kindnesses that he showed. In fact, one of my colleagues today said, did you know that I was at a function where it was raining and he held an umbrella over my head with his one good arm for an hour? Or how much he cared about the Hansen's disease patients in Kalaupapa, and he invited them to Oahu to meet with Secretary of Transportation Ray LaHood so that the Secretary could hear from these residents who often did not get to travel very much, who could share with the Secretary their own concerns and to ask for his help, and they were helped. So it is always the human dimension to what Senator Inoue did that always struck me, and he did so in a very quiet way. So we honor him, we thank him, and his last words before he passed on was aloha. And Senator, we bid you aloha. We love you. Aloha. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentlelady yields back the remainder of her time. Without objection, the previous question is ordered. Without objection, the resolution is adopted and the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts rise?
Mr. Speaker, I have a special order.
Is before the House the following personal request.
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Micah of Florida after 5:00 p.m. today.
Without objection, the request is granted. Are there any requests for speakers?
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself.
Correct. Okay. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January the 5th, 2011, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. I rise this evening to honor two great members of the Massachusetts delegation who are departing. The first, John Olver. John Olver is a public service powerhouse, a transportation titan inside of this institution. He has a Ph.D. in science, but as he came to this institution, he became a scientist who became a statesman. And we were honored to have him in our delegation and in this chamber. He was an avid outdoorsman, but he was ahead of his time in bringing attention to the impacts of climate change, the need to protect our natural environment, the need to raise science as it affected the planet to this chamber for our consideration. He arrived in Congress in 1991. His service on the Appropriations Committee helped rebuild our country's infrastructure and resulted in critical investments in transportation. But at the same time, always, he was an incredible advocate for his constituents, for their industries, and for the way of life of Western Massachusetts. He was a very special member of this institution. He began his career in the Massachusetts State Legislature. He has dedicated the largest portion of his life to serving the public, to serving ordinary citizens. And he is going to be sorely missed. He made a huge difference in the lives of the people of Massachusetts and our country. And I just want to say that from our entire delegation, but from the entire Congress, that he is definitely going to be someone who is irreplaceable in this institution. And at this point, I would like to reserve the balance of my time and to recognize the gentleman from Western Massachusetts, Mr. Neal.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Mr. Markey for his allowing me to participate in this special order tonight and to speak of two very valued members of the Massachusetts congressional delegation and to speak of two members who have had a profound influence on not just the politics of Massachusetts, but the important policies of Massachusetts. Some years ago, George W. Bush, President Bush, said to me at a St. Patrick's Day luncheon, starting out with some humor, he said, "Hey, Rich, how am I doing in Massachusetts?" And I said, "Mr. President, I don't think you're doing that great in Massachusetts right now," with some laughter. And he said to me in a very candid observation, he said, "I want to tell you something. I always liked running against you guys from Massachusetts and tangling with you guys from Massachusetts," he said, "because I always felt I was matching up against the best in America." I thought that was pretty interesting for a conservative president to talk about the Massachusetts congressional delegation. And I think that the two members who are departing from this delegation are part of the high skill of two very good legislators. Now, that's a skill that is not today held in the regard that it once was, the skill of the really good legislator. Individuals who painstakingly know where the commas have to go, know when paragraphs have to end, and to make sure that sentences don't run on so that the intention of the legislation is honored. So we all cheer on the final product, but many people dislike having to view the process that gets us there. Now, in the case of Congressman Frank, he always had this reputation for being the great and universal outsider in politics. But his success came from the fact that he mastered the skill of the insider in this institution. He knew when enough was enough and it was the best deal you were going to get. After he made full advocacy for the plan that he offered and desired, he also knew that you needed 218 votes, or in his committee, he wanted to put the face of bipartisanship on the actual bill. So Republican legislators in this institution, members of the Banking Committee, would always say to me, "Geez, Barney Frank is one capable guy," because he was looking for the compromise as the path forward. So you could talk to him about the complications of capital ratios. You could talk to him about the Federal Reserve Board. You could talk to him about world issues. But at the same time, he unfailingly made it home to march in all of those parades, to attend functions for people who had been with him in elected office for 4 decades, to make those phone calls that you have to make. And he understood, once again, that in this institution the opinions of America and the emotions of America play out. And sometimes you get a good deal, and other days you don't quite get the deal that you wanted. Before anybody in public life was advocating for gay rights, Barney Frank was in the forefront. Barney Frank was in the forefront on women's rights, and he was a great scholar, student, and participant in the civil rights struggle of our times. Both these legislators are also, interestingly enough, and in my mind, principled individuals, children of the New Deal, who believed that government plays a positive role in the lives of the American family. Not because government draws a conclusion on where we end up necessarily in life, but they both believe fervently in the idea that government ensured that everybody could get to the starting line for the race. Now, in the case of John Olver, Ray LaHood said to me one night at dinner, and Ray's been a fast friend, and for those of us who are interested in transportation in western Massachusetts, and indeed central Massachusetts, Ray LaHood said to me, you know, John Olver is one smart guy. And he said, the meetings in his office can go on for a long time, but he said, I've got to tell you, he really understands transportation theory, and he understands transportation implementation. A couple of the great things that we were able to participate in, because in western Massachusetts we always use the argument that people don't pay enough attention to our part of the state, but it was the small things like extending broadband access into the hill towns of western Massachusetts, improving rail transportation from New Haven to Hartford to Springfield and onto Vermont. And in the case of John Olver, very helpful to me when I asked him in the transportation legislation to make sure that my congressional district and constituency were able to secure the funding that we desired. That's an important part of the legislator's life. And I also think that what was interesting about John and Barney, they're believers. In a time where the public often says that the elected embrace superficial positions only to seek and curry the favor of the public, one of the two important things about these two guys, they were happy to tell you they disagreed with you. In fact, as the two of them got older, they were enthusiastic about telling you they disagreed with you. You know, oftentimes when you walk into a room where the audience might be one that only wants you to say what they want you to say, these two would go into the room and say what they thought was on their minds. Conclusions that they had drawn after long service in this institution and in the Massachusetts legislature. But I also will tell you, based upon the point that I raised at the beginning of my comments, we need to return in this institution to the skill of the legislator. It's the same skill that the jeweler looks at a diamond with. It's the same ambition that takes people to Pulitzer Prizes. It's the athlete in the gym who spends their time preparing for the Olympics. We need to honor that skill because it's often outside of the glare of the public, and when the public does see it, they're uncomfortable with it. But it's the give and take of legislative life that made these two very good to work with. And I'll say this about the two of them as well. They might not like it. There were times when we needed something that they might not quite have been in agreement with. And after you got a little bit of their irritation, they generally included what it was that you wanted. So it was an honor to serve with them, and I hope that we haven't heard the last of either John Olver or Barney Frank. They've been very important to this institution and to America.
I thank the gentleman so much. And now I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mike Capuano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the gentleman for yielding. I generally don't do a whole lot of work on this stuff, but I've known these two gentlemen a long time. I met them both in 1976 when I was in law school and had the good fortune of getting a work-study job at the State House. They were both there already. They were both already well-recognized and influential at the State House. And I will tell you that from the day I met them, I started learning from both of them. I want to be very clear. I want to echo everything Richie Neal said. I hold public service up in high regard. I know that everybody in the Mass delegation does as well. These two gentlemen not only have served in Congress, they've served at state level, and they were both educators. They didn't do this because that's what they could do. One has a PhD from MIT, the other has a law degree from Harvard. Either one of them could have done anything they wanted to do and been well compensated doing it, and had a much more comfortable life, never having read their names in the newspapers as bad people on different occasions. The fact that they gave of themselves right from the beginning, they didn't go out and make $1 million and then come in. Right from the beginning, as young men, I think it's an amazing thing, because for those of us who've done or followed a similar path, the first several years doing public service, no matter what you're doing, are not lucrative. They're usually a difficult struggle. And to stick to it for as long as they did, between the two of them, if you add up not just the years as an elective office, because elective office is only one way to give back to the public, but you add to that the years they served as staff members or teachers, you add that together combined, we're talking 100 years, guys. I'm sorry. Between the two of you, it's 100 years of public service to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's something that's amazing. As I said, I started learning from them both at the State House. Didn't stop. I moved beyond the State House. John was still there. Bonnie had moved to Congress. I kept learning from him. And then when I came to Congress, I'll be honest, in my job at the State House, because I went on to become a full-time employee. You know it, but most people listening don't know it. Massachusetts, most of the committees are joint committees, House and Senate. And I was on a joint committee payroll, but everybody knew that I worked for the House. John happened to be the Senate chairman of the committee I worked for. And since Massachusetts is such an overwhelmingly Democratic state, my job was really to do everything I could to stick it to John all on behalf of the House, get everything we wanted and not what the Senate wanted. It was kind of funny, because now in the Congress, it's amazing. Really, those fights were really nothing more than just the epitome of family fights. They were nothing compared to the fights we have here that are based on deep philosophical differences of opinion. But even then, I loved working with John, because, as Richie said, I remember once with 2½, we traveled in the state arguing against limitations of local rights. And John went on for about 20, 30 minutes at some hearing about the evils of this particular proposition. And he broke it. Everybody's kind of getting tired and moving on. John broke. He said, I'm awfully sorry I'm kind of running on about this issue, but you have to understand, I'm a college professor, I think in 50-minute blocks. And then he went right back in and did the other 20 minutes. I don't know if he convinced anybody, but he made me laugh for the whole time, because he knew who he was. He knew what he was. And he knew the subject matter. When I get to Congress, my first assignment, per one of my many friends and mentors, Joe Moakley, financial services. Bonnie was already there. I can't tell you how much I learned from him. We share a philosophical view, as I think most of the delegation does, particularly in the matters in financial services. Housing is a passion of mine, has been for a long time, as it was with Bonnie. And the truth is, it really became incredibly easy for me. I was able to kind of step back on the details of a lot of the major housing policies because Bonnie was such a champion. And I was able to focus on some of the holes that I saw in some of the policies that maybe some of the other members of this Congress don't see. That's true about many, many things. The financial services bill. Bonnie just carried that bill like you can't believe. It allowed me the opportunity to not worry about the big stuff because Bonnie was going to take care of it. But I got to focus on some of the smaller details that we got engaged in. I learned so much from him as a member of the Financial Services Committee. I hope I can be 1/10 as successful as you have been, Bonnie, in bringing people together, but not forgetting who and what we are and who and what we believe in. And then I get on the Transportation Committee. And John, by that time, was already the cardinal of Transportation Subcommittee Appropriations. And it's true, Rich. I thought I knew a fair amount about transportation. I'm kind of one of those guys that thinks, don't tell me about my district. Nobody knows my district better than I do. I know the needs. I work with them. That's one of the reasons I'm such a vocal and public proponent of earmarks, because no one knows my congressional district better than I do, except when it came to transportation matters, except John Oliver. I got to tell you, John, it made me angry a couple of times when you came up and you told me things about my district, my transportation needs, that you were right, that I hadn't realized. Like, oh, geez, got me again. And I can't tell you how many times I've worked with him to try to improve transportation policy for my district, but in turn for the Commonwealth, and in turn for the country. And I just wanted to come up tonight to thank both of them for their service on behalf of the general public, but also as a personal matter. Both of you have been guiding lights for me. I have learned a lot from both of you. Different approaches, similar philosophies, different personalities, different attitudes, and I'm a little different than both of you on some things, but I'm alike on some things as well. I will tell you that as a lifelong resident of Massachusetts, I'm proud that you served us. I'm proud that I've had the opportunity to work with you before Congress and in Congress, and I will tell you that I'm proud to call you both a colleague and a friend. Thank you very much.
I thank the gentleman for his comments, and I turn to recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Keating.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.